episode of Command Combat Battle Reports. Today we will be doing Command Combat Civil War, my game and the one for which this channel is named. We are going to be doing a battle out of the 1861 rulebook, which was the very first one. It's army lists out of the actual rulebook, and we're doing it on a 3 foot by 3 foot card table to show that some of these battles can be small. And usually it's 6 foot by 4 foot, but you can do smaller battles on here. So let's take a look at the armies. These are the two armies we're going to be using. It's a little bit smaller since we're using the card table, but not much smaller. It's 750 points on each, so it might get a little bit crowded, but we wanted a full corps here. We got a Union Corps on the right, Confederate on the left. Let's take a look at the Union first. The Corps commander is Fremont. He has a special ability, Pathfinder, which makes it so that he can, basically everybody under his command does not get slowed by terrain very effectively. So they'll be probably moving through this pretty quickly. We've got General Miles is a 1st Division, and he's got a brigade of 4 stands with artillery and another brigade with artillery, and it's both rifled artillery, which shoots a bit further, and he's got a little bit of cavalry. His other division commander is Grant. At this particular point in 1861, he was a division commander. He rose through the ranks, and he has with him Sherman's brigade. Figured we'd put them together. They were not together in 1861, but in this particular case, they will be. And their special ability is that they do not get slowed by terrain. So with his, they get slowed less by terrain. So his ability mixed with Fremont's ability is going to mean they're going to zip through this board if there's a lot of terrain. He has artillery with him, and you also have another brigade of 5 stands. Oh yeah, you'll also notice that there are the purple markings are the division markers, so that shows what division they are in. Some of them have white, that means they're standard, and a lot of them have nothing on them, that means they're green. Basically, within the rules, you're supposed to put a green pin when they're green, but we've kind of found that, like in 1861, so many units are green that you might as well just put no marker on them, because basically then anybody who doesn't have a marker is green. And then when you go into like 62, 63, most of the people are standard, so often don't mark them standard, but mark them when they are veteran or green. And then in 64, so many people are veteran, might as well not mark that, and instead mark when they are standard and green. So let's check out the Confederates. You've got the Corps commander is Polk, and his special ability is Jump the Gun, which allows all of his units to move in, to start a little further into the battlefield. So they will be starting further in on this card table, which will probably push them significantly far, considering how little room there is on the table. We have the division commander is Ewell, who's a pretty good commander at this time. However, he likes to give himself his own commands, his own orders, and so every turn he might be changing his own orders there. He's got green infantry and some more green infantry with smoothbore artillery. Basically just, I guess it's just 4 infantry brigades. Each one has 3 infantry brigades. Each one has 4 stands and some smoothbore artillery. The other division commander is going to be Magruder. Now he has a really fun special ability. He was actually a theater director before the war, and when he got really outnumbered, he basically put on a production for the Union and made it look like he had far more troops than he really did. And so his special ability is that as long as his troops are within some kind of terrain, he can hide them, and the enemy does not necessarily know where they are. So what does he have to do this? Well, he's got Bonham's brigade, which is even more of a production, because their whole thing is, you'll notice they have Union uniforms in there. That is not a mistake. What happened was Bonham's brigade were dressed in Union uniforms, and so the Union did not fire at them thinking, oh, well, that's one of ours. So they have the special ability, as long as they don't shoot one turn, then the Union cannot shoot at them. And then you have 5 infantry standard brigade and another 4 standard cavalry. Oh, this is Stuart's cavalry, and they have a special ability that once during the game, actually no, it's many times they want, they can run up and try to capture an enemy. Again, as long as they don't shoot at them that turn, they can try to order them to fall in with them. Oh no, I guess they can shoot them that turn. Anyway, it comes from the Battle of First Bull Run, where Stuart literally just rode up into a Union line thinking he was one of his own, then realized mistake too late, but rather than going, oh okay, I surrender, he went, all of you, put down your weapons and march that way. And they did, and they walked right into prisoners' hands, or into a prison camp basically, or well, into being prisoners. And so that is reflected in this game as something that you can do. You can try to capture a regiment. It wouldn't be a whole brigade, but you can try to capture a regiment that way. So that's Stuart's cavalry. Those are your forces. We're going to get set up. It's going to be a meeting engagement, so let's see how it goes. So here everyone is finally set up. My game does take a little bit of time to do the setup, but that's because it sort of represents the skirmishing taking place at the beginning between the cavalry, and you know, it kind of gets past a lot of elements, especially when you're doing on a card table like this, because now everybody's right in each other's face, especially because the Confederates have General Polk. So as a result, they got to set up quite a bit further. They would have actually been able to set up even further, really kind of pushing the Union out of this parts of the battlefield, because they had the spy Rose Greenhow, which allows them to set up 5 inches even further in. So you'd have 26 inches from the cavalry, then 5 inches more. That would have put them pretty much right at that hill. The Union would have had it set up on the flanks, but the Union blocked that with their own spy action of Timothy Webster. However, they do both have events, and the Confederates used a couple of raiders, both of whom were successful, so the Union is down to only 2 ammo, which they usually have 4 on their supply wagon. Confederates still have their 3. The Union raiders did not work quite as well. And so that is going to be their setup. You can see here that the Confederates have gotten their dismounted cavalry. They moved their cavalry up to this fence line here. This is like cornfield or wheat field. They're probably a wheat field of some sort. And they've gotten up to the fence line here to defend against the Union over there. And their infantry, being able to set up as far as they did, they are already entering the wheat field. With their artillery here pointed to the side, pointed towards the Union dismounted cavalry, who they moved up to this creek line. The creek, by the way, is fordable, but you lose half your movement when going across it, unless you are the Sherman's men. But more on that in a moment. Anyway, so the Union cavalry moved up to this creek line to defend it, dismounted. These Confederates set up after them, and so now they are set up straight on their flank, so it's going to be really important as to who manages to move first in that particular regard. They, like as I said, the others are moving, the infantry is moving up already into that wheat field while the cavalry is holding it. There's others, infantry moving up here. You'll notice they have artillery right behind them. Basically, when artillery is set up, butted up right behind infantry, it means that they're integrated in with that infantry, so they'll be able to fire. You have more of them back here. You have Magruder is represented, his entire division is represented, there's a fallen down tree, is represented with these white dots. We don't know which ones he's in. They also have artillery on that hill. The Union has a division basically all set up around this hill. The line of infantry is at the bottom, and the artillery is all at the top. They also have some artillery set up over here. Infantry set up at the creek, and as I said, the cavalry is set up here, dismounted cavalry. And there's Sherman's brigade, a very long one over here. It's probably the majority of their army, the largest part of their army. Set up all along here. Clearly they are set up for marching around here because they will be able to go across that creek. Now Magruder set up before Sherman's brigade, so it's really going to matter as to which area he set up in. Did he set up over here to defend against that? Or did he set up back here? We will see. On to turn 1. Into the first turn, and there's already some heated action. Let's start here with Ewell's division. Their artillery specifically, because we were waiting to see who would get to go first, them or this cavalry, and it was Ewell. They blasted away some of that cavalry from the flank, or the dismounted cavalry from the flank, causing really bad morale roll and all that, but they did manage to just make it. Sherman's brigade, which had come up behind them, was not sure they were going to pass it, so they turned and got into a firing line to take on that artillery in case. However, the cavalry is holding strong over there. The rest of Ewell's line moved up here, but there was that dismounted Confederate cavalry over here. They were not going to be able to get past. It's the reason why there's a card drawing system in this game, because sometimes one guy gets orders and moves before the other one, and it kind of becomes disjointed. So as a result, they were not able to move up to there. The rest of Ewell's infantry moved up. Ewell himself is getting up there. He's on an attack order, and he moved some men up on the flank, fired over here on the Union, and actually they were supported with some artillery, and managed to take a casualty. This Union, meanwhile, wanted to move forward, wanted to spring up into here. Actually, they wanted to wait to see if the cavalry would stay where it was so they could fire at them, or if they, if they'd move, they'd want to move up on them. However, so basically the game, as I said before, it's based on a card drawing system. You get a number of cards equal to your initiative so that you can kind of choose when you want to go. Both sides wanted to go last at this point, Magruder and this is Miles. Both of them wanted to be the last one to go so they could see what the other one was doing. Miles ended up having to choose first, so he committed his men to stay where they are, and then Magruder's men, which is actually Stuart's cavalry, got back up on their horses and jumped back here. So this long line of infantry was unable to fire at them. So instead, the artillery decided to fire way over here. These guys, they did not manage to hit, but they did give them a bad morale roll, and a lot of other people shook off their morale. Everybody basically shook off their morale this turn. We'll see if that continues. Turn 2, and things are heating up. Let's start on the Union left flank, Confederate right. The Union line there has turned to meet them. They're refusing their flank. Actually, you can see that line there, and they had them all facing towards the wheat field there, but the one unit has turned to meet them over there. They're both taking one casualty, just slowly starting to whittle one another down. The Confederates have this artillery to support. The Union has this general here. The rest of the line, including that artillery and some of the men over there, fired over here onto this one line. And they did manage to do just a little bit of damage, but did not cause them to retreat, plus the fact that Ewell is back there to sort of help. So they're not going anywhere. This artillery fired from a long range over this artillery, and you notice one of them is gone. They had a grand battery going there. However, it got one hit, and then the Confederates played their event, which was backfire, so that when the Union artillery fired, they took another damage. So that artillery now is gone due to an event. Their gun backfired on them. The rest of this line, Sherman is now moving up across this creek with his ability and Fremont's ability. They were able to move quite a bit further. Remember, all the creek is fordable. It's just you would go normally across the bridge there. They're near these woods. We do not know where Magruder is yet, so he might be getting himself into range, although then again he might be picking a fight. This artillery tried firing over here. Did actually do a little bit of damage over there, but Grant is keeping them all steady. They are not taking any morale damage, and so that is basically where we are at the end of turn 2. A great turn 3 for the Confederates, a really devastating turn for the Union. Let's start this time over here on the right flank. Magruder has come out of these woods. This is indeed the one that he was hiding in, and he pushed out here, got these guys almost on Sherman's flank, not quite, but as you can see, did some damage, caused his brigade to pull back. They did not lose anybody. No, well, actually, they did take one casualty, but they were not forced to pull back. Meanwhile, their artillery decided to continue on with the cavalry, did some more damage for them. We have to put the casualty marker down, we forgot that, and caused them to rout. All along this line, they concentrated their fire on this line, did do a bit of damage, but didn't actually cause them to rout or even make them go shaken. They actually came out of being shaken and are just continuing to hold there. Ewell changed his own order to defend, which is blue, which was actually a smart move, and that's keeping them from pulling back. Then they concentrated their fire on that unit on that side. They managed to put a firepower of 9, which for those of you who know the game, that is the maximum amount of firepower that you can put on somebody. And then they rolled a 1, which is the most amount of damage you can do to somebody. It's a full stand and a half, so 3 of those casualty markers are from this turn alone. Just blasted them. They have Fremont behind them for morale, but he is not that good. He called them to stand tall, and actually his words did affect them because it is what caused them to stay where they are. They're shaken but not moving anywhere. Stuart's cavalry, meanwhile, has come out of the wheat field and is moving around to that flank, which seems just in time because that flank is beginning to fold. And really, this flank is beginning to fold too. It's really pretty devastating for the Union on this one. And the devastation continues for the Yankees. Where even to begin with this? Let's start during the movement phase when a charge took place over here. The Confederates who were over at the crossroads ran into here. Fremont went up there to try to keep the men in line, but they pulled back up onto the hill, which was probably a pretty good move, especially the Confederates did not roll high enough to continue the pursuits. They ended at the bottom of the hill. However, during their morale phase, they did not manage to make it. In fact, they rolled so badly that they are now routing off this table, so they are gone. In fact, it was 2 stands there, and now it is 0. They have pulled away. Confederates, seeing this, have pulled their infantry up, and their cavalry continues to swing around. They are rolling up the flank over here. More on that later. This infantry unit was still at the fence, holding the Yankees in place, while meanwhile Magruder's men moved in all around Sherman's brigade, which was here. You may notice they're not there anymore. They've not routed or anything, but Grant moved up here to try to keep them where they were, and they all went, hey, you know what's a good idea? We hide behind you. You want to fight so bad? We'll just go back here. Grant, meanwhile, also was trying to keep the cavalry staying in place, but as you can see, they did not succeed at their role, so they have routed off this table. That is 2 units who have gone. This may be the end for the Union already. We're going to have to check on that. This artillery unit has said, my job is done, so I'm going to get on this road and continue forward. Over here, they ended up having to pull back just a little bit, but once again, their job was done. They held the Union in place while these guys moved around their flank. During all the firing, Miles got hit, and he is KIA. Oh, I did forget to mention earlier, when the Confederates were coming in, when they were charging, they get 1 firing as they go. They got a lucky hit. They did manage to hit Fremont, but he got the result of shake it off. So he, well, in fact, actually, it added morale for his guys. So they actually benefited from that and might have actually stayed, but it wasn't enough for them. But over here, Miles was just killed in action. KIA, he's done. He can't give his men morale, so they're not happy. They're not happy with it. This may be done. We'll check here. And the Yankees continue to fight, even though they really probably should not. They should be getting out of here. But they stay, they hold, and the Confederate cavalry comes back up here. Stuart has completely flanked those cannons. They're not going to get any defensive fire. Actually, this is mid-turn, so you know, the turn is not over yet, but we wanted to show you here before everything gets taken. You can see the line of Confederates are moving in on them, and the charge is about to happen, so we'll show you what happens after this charge takes place. So the melee has happened. This infantry, who was within an inch, came in to support. They had their melee. No casualties were rolled. Of course, there's always casualties in melee, so they're both going to take a half stand, or the cavalry will take a full stand. The Union brigade lost their morale, so they pulled back, and the Confederates stayed where they were, so they destroyed this. However, in their morale roll, they rolled exactly what their morale was, so that means they go shaken, so the charge stops. With the cavalry there, the Union infantry here, both have taken a little bit of casualties, and that's where they stand at the moment. And the turn ends with the Union being backed into this corner. They are back here. Grant's guys are standing strong. He's behind his guys here. This is Sherman's brigade. They're trading shots with some Confederates over here. Now, Grant actually got hit. Normally that would be bad, but he has his special ability in 1861 is he ain't worth the bullet. And where I get that from is there were 2 separate times when a private actually had Grant in his sight, and both times they said, well, he isn't worth it. He just looked like such a, you know, sack, just sort of a hunched over sack of potatoes or something. He just really did not look impressive. And they really judged a book by his cover. It's like, well, if he doesn't look good, he must not be very good at what he does, so it's not even, isn't even worth a bullet. So in both cases, they didn't shoot him, and in both cases, they would have, had him dead by the beginning of the war. But since they didn't, he still is around, and that's the way it's reflected here. Rolled a 0, had to re-roll it, did not get him, so he kept his men standing there. They are now starting to weaken these guys, who actually are now low on ammo. So, and there's Magruder right with them. These Confederates have had a little bit better luck with these Federals who are pulling back. Their morale actually should be 8. That'll be right there in a moment. We saw this charge take place. There is a lot of Federal casualties here. They have pulled back. This brigade has had to take position, or take the place of the division commander who has fallen. Confederates have pushed in there, and there they've basically got them surrounded, and their artillery is coming up back here. So they are coming in. There is not much hope for the Federals. In fact, the Confederates actually have already gotten one of their objectives, which was that building back there. And there's not a lot of hope. In fact, the Federals might be retreating just purely because of casualties here. I forgot to mention this last turn. This was not this turn, but the turn just before this, this particular group was going to be getting shot at by them. One of the reasons why they're doing a little bit better than this particular brigade is because this group of Federals was going to shoot at them, but it's Bonham's brigade, and they're the ones dressed as Federals, and as long as they didn't shoot, they don't get shot at. And last turn they chose not to shoot, or at least as long as they don't shoot at the unit that they're going to use the ability on, that unit cannot shoot back at them. So Bonham's brigade did not shoot at this particular brigade, so this brigade was not able to fire at them. And that's usable once, so because it's fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, well, I'm going to blame it on someone else because I don't want to take any responsibility for it. So that was last turn. This turn they opened up on them, and they have been pushing them back. And sure enough, the amount of damage have caused the Federals to pull out of this. Fremont's damage percentage is 40%. They reached it as soon as that artillery piece was taken away, and so that does it for the Federals. They are basically pulling back into this. Normally, they would get one more turn of you're basically holding where they are and seeing how many points the Confederates can get on them, knowing that they're about to pull out. But seeing as how dire it is for them, we can pretty much tell the Confederates have won this. By the way, something I forgot to mention on the turn just before this last one, Bonham's brigade actually chose not to fire at the brigade across from them, but instead elected to use their special ability, which basically allows them to not shoot at a unit and have that unit not shoot at them, because, hey, look, we look like you, we're in your uniforms, why would you want to shoot at us? So they did that one time, but fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, well, blame it on someone else, because I don't want to take any responsibility, but you get the idea. So they, after that, the two sides started shooting each other. Confederates got the better of it, pushed them back, and what you ended up with was this line of the Federals, well, sort of a line, kind of holding this little corner of the table, and the Confederates holding the rest. That was a good fight. In fact, I kind of liked the way it worked on this card table. I mean, you didn't have a lot of range with the artillery, and in fact, the Federals were really at a disadvantage because they mostly deal with rifled artillery, which is ranged artillery, and when they have large tables, they can really do it. But a lot of Civil War battles happen on tables with a lot of terrain, so oftentimes they can't really see it. So sometimes, oddly enough, the smoothbore artillery works better, and the Confederates really were able to do it with the smoothbore here at short range. They had one, that came up in ambush, came up to here. Grant was really trying to hold his line and was really doing it, but over on this side, the Confederates just were able to really push in. And yes, the Federals had all of that rifled artillery, but again, when it's only doing one, at close range, that doesn't help a lot. Now, of course, one of the mistakes the Federals did was they really were, their main strategy was to try to break through the center, but it was just sort of a stubborn kind of strategy because they kept on trying it, and clearly it wasn't working. Clearly they weren't going to be able to break through there. So while they concentrated on that one central point, Confederates came through one flank, and the other, and they really did a pincer move. So this really was very much of a pincer maneuver on the part of the Confederates. Good move on their part, well played. Well, thank you all for watching. Watch each week. We'll have different videos on this, and I'll have some tutorials on how to play this game and some announcements on the final expansion, 1864, as well as the battle pack and just some special announcements and that sort of thing. And we're going to have a battle report from each one of the expansions, 1861, 62, 63, 64, and there will be a final book that has all those years and some additional information from 1865. So thank you all for watching. Be sure to subscribe, watch each week, and watch our other shows as well. And happy gaming, everybody!